Hey everyone, this is Savannah with Fame Magazine, and today I'm sitting down with Nora Fingscheidt to talk about her upcoming film, The Outrun. What a personal and intimate film with heavy subjects within its respect, Nora. Like, I enjoyed it so much. I'd love to know what about Amy Liptrot's story made you want to be a part of the adaptation.
Um, Many things, I mean, I read her book knowing that Saoirse Ronan was attached to star and produce already. So it was kind of a mix between reading a book but also seeing a movie at the same time with the cast. And at first I thought, it's unadaptable because the book is so internal. It's almost like a collection of journal writing or scientific essays or something. But then the more I progressed, I was so intrigued by the setting, the brutal honesty about how things went down in London, but then this whole description of this process of recovery and how she sees the world. And it is about so much more than alcoholism. It is about healing, about reconnecting to your home, about the inheritance of mental illness and how it runs through a family, So I don't know, many things.
Yeah, I can imagine. I really loved like the range of the emotion in the film. There was a lot going on, and then the journal entries. Like I wasn't expecting that, so I thought that was beautiful. I can't imagine what went into getting those shots and having it all cohesive in that way. But given the themes of the film, I would love to know what it looks like to sort of create an emotionally safe environment for everyone in front and behind the camera that may resonate deeply with a story like this.
Yeah. I mean, this film, I think in the end is all about emotional responsibility when it comes to my job, not just towards the people in front of the camera, but also behind the camera, and also most, or first and foremost, Amy herself and her family, you know. So I think it starts as soon as the script writing process. It is clear that we tell a story about Amy's real life, and we shot in the real locations of her life. It's her farm, the caravan of her dad. It's the Rose Cottage where she wrote the book, It's like all those, that her childhood home. So it was very important to work with her as closely as I could in terms of making these decisions together. We gave the script to read to her parents that so they would know what's coming, because they are not celebrities who are used to having their life thrown out in the public anyways. And the rest of the team moves on to the next project, whereas they have to live together with the film forever. So I think that's where it started on this end, making sure everybody is aware what we're doing all the time. And then when it comes to the shooting process, of course, difficult scenes require more time. Um, the worst thing you can do if you have emotionally challenging scenes is rush them. Those can be even very quiet scenes, like when Rona wakes up in the morning after having messed up her relationship with Danon and doesn't remember anything. It's a very intimate scene. It just takes 2 minutes, You could technically shoot it in, I don't know, an hour and a half, and we
Mhm.
had half a day for it. So
Wow.
they have space to go into this emotional landscape. And then, of course, we work with stunt coordinators, intimacy coordinators, everything to make sure everybody knows what's happening all the time and is okay with it.
Yeah, that's that's incredible. Like for a scene for an entire day, I can imagine like watching that, like there was a lot of emotional weight in it, so that makes a lot of sense. And I can imagine Amy watching it for the first time and seeing like this is her home, her childhood home, and like having her story like played in front of her. I'm sure that was so special. But I also really found it fascinating that Saoirse, I feel like she kind of carried the weight of the film being so much of it that she was alone on this island and kept the theme of the film high. What was it like working with her, not only like producing the film, but also starring as a main character? What does that collaboration look like?
The great thing when you have an actor or an actress who's the producer is they are fully committed. It's their baby. They are as responsible for the whole product, not just for their role. And that makes it wonderful for me because then I have so much access that usually it's not always the case because people are busy and they're in other projects and you're like, hey, we're shooting 3 weeks. So knowing that it was her baby, her first project as a producer was great. And then, so she was involved in the development, in the editing process, in everything. But working with her as an actress is quite amazing because she's so professional, but easygoing at the same time. She's 29, so she's a young woman and she's
Yeah.
fun to hang out with and she's funny and, smart and extremely talented, but she's also a pro. She's been on film set for 20 years.
Right.
So she knows what she needs to prepare, what's her process like. Yeah, I found it very inspiring,
Yeah.
really.
Her performance is always like immaculate to me. Like I think she's incredibly talented. So I was really excited to watch her in this specific kind of storyline. I don't think I've seen her in something like this before, in something so deep and heavy. But the line from Saoirse, "I can't be happy sober," I felt like it had a lot of weight to it. There was like a build up there. During that scene, was there any like specific direction that you gave her to make sure that that weight translated?
Wow. You picked a good moment because we always thought that this line it is almost the overall question of the film.
Hmm.
Can Rona be happy sober? That is really what the movie is about in the end. Um, I don't remember if there was a specific direction. I mean, it was clear that it needed some space and that it needed come from the heart. But yeah, I,
I thought
um,
that was a really good line. Like there was like a pause and like I don't remember the character who she was talking to, but she was talking to a friend. Um, and I felt like she like I felt it in her energy that she was like working up to that line. And it's like three-fourths away. I don't want to give away too much, but it's like three-fourths away in the film. And I thought that was like a really great, I don't know, like place for it to be because we're still in the battle. Like it's not like it hasn't ended, you know?
yeah.
But I would really love to know what message you hope audiences take away from a film like this.
Well, depends on the audience. I do hope that for people who do have a relationship with addiction in any ways, it doesn't even need to be alcohol specifically,
Mhm.
that the film gives hope. Because yes, it's very brutal in times, but I do think ultimately it's a very hopeful story that can empower people in terms of healing as possible. But I also hope that the film reaches audiences who may not have any thing to do with alcoholism and maybe create some understanding of how tough recovery can be. Because if you look from the outside and you don't have a relationship with alcohol, you're like, well, you're 6 months sober. That's great. Get on with your life now. But for the people in the situation, that's usually when the tough time starts.
Yeah.
It's like when the rehab structure is over and you're back into your normal life. And now it's one day at a time. And for some people, even after 10, 12 years, it's still one day at a time.
Yeah. And I've thankfully have never struggled with any kind of addiction, but I've had a lot of people, or not a lot of people, but like a decent amount of people around me that I care about that have struggled with an addiction in some way. And watching a movie like this is just a reminder to give people so much grace for their internal battles because you really don't know what's going on
Yeah.
internally and like and it's not as easy as just stop. Like it's so
Yeah.
much more complex than that. And I think a lot of people, especially someone that doesn't struggle with addiction, they forget and they just don't realize.
Yeah.
So I think this is really
Yeah.
special in terms of giving people a reminder to give people grace that are going through something like that. But I would also love to know how did you feel like your direction influenced the final portrayal of the characters' struggles compared to how they were initially portrayed in the script? I feel like that like transition from paper to real life can sometimes be different depending on who's in charge of the direction.
Yeah. Do you mean in the script or in the book?
And in the, I guess both. I guess like what whoever wherever it came from in terms of like where the guidelines were. I'm not sure if it was like scripted right after the book was I mean the book was written and then before the film was created. But I guess for the
Right. So Amy and I, we wrote the script, we co-wrote the script
oh
together.
oh okay cool.
So the character in the film And Saoirse was part of that development process.
Oh, okay.
So the character of the film is very much like I had intended it while writing the script.
Uh,
The book, of course, is the real Amy, and we wanted always to make sure we don't do an interpretation of, or an imitation of the real person. We wanted to create a character that it's its own entity almost, to get some creative license, to stylize things or dramatize or simplify or all those things you got to do with the real life in order to make it a narrative feature film story. But it was very important to go through that process together with Amy because, it still needed to feel true to her story.
right. I can imagine. Well, that's so cool. I think it's really cool when there's like a book adaptation and then there's the author is so involved because I find that maybe sometimes, maybe not all the time, that the author's not as involved as maybe they would like to be, depending on like I don't know rights. But that's really cool that Amy was so involved. Of course, given this is such a personal story to her. But
Yeah.
this is your third feature film, right?
Yeah.
So cool. I'd love to know if you have any advice for any first-time directors wanting to, or like going into directing their first feature film.
Wow. Advice. I think you need a lot of patience in terms of, or persistence. Maybe it's not just patience, don't lay down waiting for something magical to happen. But things take so much time and there's so much ups and downs, and it is so important to keep on going and believing that one day the story is going to be told. My first feature film, it took me 6 years
Wow.
from the idea, and now having spent more time in the feature film world, I realize that's not even very slow.
Yeah.
It's quite fast for a first feature in the end.